Philosopher's Stone, the ultimate power, the answer to every alchemist's ambition, the way to break the rules of reality itself. Or at least, that's what people think. In Fullmetal Alchemist, the Philosopher's Stone isn't a miracle. It's a shortcut built on sacrifice, a cheat paid for in the lives of others, and when you try to take a shortcut through alchemy, through life itself, there's something waiting for you on the other side. Truth, not a ruler, not a judge, just what is, the voice of the universe, the mirror of your own soul, the inescapable reality of every choice you've ever made. And when the antagonist father finally stands before it, desperate, broken, demanding to know what he did wrong, truth doesn't punish him, it simply tells him the truth. You never believed in yourself. You stole your power from others. You rejected your own humanity. And truth's answer?
You simply must have seen the answer with your own eyes.
Because in the world of Fullmetal Alchemist, alchemy is more than a science. It's a reflection of the soul. Every transmutation requires a price, and those who seek the ultimate knowledge, the ones who step beyond their limits, break the taboos, and attempt human transmutation, they come face to face with truth. But truth isn't some cruel enforcer of some divine law. It's wise, direct, and maybe a little amused. It doesn't punish, it simply shows you the consequences of your choices. And when Edward Elric finally understands the truth, not alchemy, not power, but the value of being human, truth doesn't stand in his way. It congratulates him. So today, we're diving into the real meaning behind the Philosopher's Stone, the hermetic roots of equivalent exchange, and why truth in Fullmetal Alchemist isn't just a cosmic force. It's the final mirror waiting for you to recognize yourself. Let's get into it. To understand Fullmetal Alchemist, we have to start with the Philosopher's Stone, because the entire story revolves around one question. What are you willing to give in order to get what you want? In legend, the Philosopher's Stone is the alchemist's greatest treasure. The substance that turns lead into gold, grants eternal life, and unlocks all knowledge. But if you've ever studied real alchemy, you know that wasn't what the stone really was about. Alchemy was the great work, the magnum opus, and the lead, that wasn't just metal, that was you, your base nature, your flaws, your ignorance. And the gold, that wasn't wealth, that was enlightenment. So what happens in Fullmetal Alchemist? The Philosopher's Stone is no longer a symbol of inner transformation. It's a perversion of it. A stone not made from self-transmutation, but from stolen souls. Instead of changing themselves, the people who seek the stone in Fullmetal Alchemist try to take power from others. It's a shortcut, a cheat, a false path to divinity. And this is the perfect metaphor for what has happened to true spiritual knowledge throughout history and even to today. False stones, false promises, false seekers. Because once you've taken the real path, the hard path off the table, what are you left with? A deception, a shortcut, a lie wrapped in the language of salvation. And nothing embodies this more than Father Cornello. Father Cornello is the first villain Edward and Alphonse encounter in their journey, but more importantly, he is a symbol, a false prophet, a charlatan, draped in divine authority. He claims to perform miracles through the power of Leto, the sun god. To the people of Lior, he is a messiah, promising them a world where false faith alone can bring salvation. But to Edward and Alphonse, real alchemists who understand the laws of reality, he is just another fraud. Because they know the pattern. They've seen men like him before. Because when someone claims they can break the laws of alchemy, when they offer power without price, they aren't revealing their wisdom. They're exposing their fraud. From the moment Edward and Alphonse step into Lior, they know exactly what's going on. They don't need time to investigate. They don't even need time to hear Cornello's sermons, because they've already met his kind before. A false seeker, someone who doesn't pursue wisdom but controls it. Someone who doesn't try to understand truth, but tries to bend reality to his wants. Edward sees it immediately, the moment Cornello's followers start speaking of miracles, of power that breaks the laws of alchemy. He knows exactly what that means, because the moment someone claims they can create something from nothing, they have already exposed themselves as frauds. Alchemy cannot create something from nothing. That is the absolute rule of alchemy. You have to pay a price to obtain something. Equivalent exchange. Ring any bells? Edward doesn't even hesitate to call Cornelio out, because he knows. Cornelio is lying. But to those who don't understand the truth, to the people of Lior, desperate and longing for salvation, Cornelio isn't a fraud. He's a Messiah. And that's what makes him so dangerous. Because false seekers do not appeal to reason. They appeal to the desires of the desperate. And no one is more desperate than that of Rose. She isn't just another follower, she is a believer. A girl who has lost everything and has been told that blind faith alone will restore it. That if she just follows Cornelio, if she just prays hard enough, she will get back what she has lost. Her fanatical devotion to Cornelio is not just about him. It's about what he represents. Hope. A shortcut to salvation, a reason not to feel the pain of loss. And this is where Edward sees something deeper, because in her, he sees himself. Rose says, Father Cornelio says that if we pray the sun god Leto will bring them back to us. But she isn't ready to hear the truth, not yet. And that's the tragedy of false seekers. They don't just deceive. They make their followers believe that deception is salvation. And this is where the myth of Icarus comes into play. Because Cornelio doesn't just tell people they can reach the sun. He gives them wax wings and tells them to fly. And Rose, like so many others, has never been told what happens when you fly too close to the sun. But Edward and Alphonse, they have. They reached for something beyond their limits, and like Icarus, they fell. And Cornelio, he's the kind of man who hands out wings made of wax, knowing full well that the moment his followers fly, they will fall, because he has no real power, just a stolen illusion. But here's the thing. Cornelio is not unique. Throughout history, there have always been false alchemists, men who claim to have found the secret to transmutation, who promised kings and nobles that they could turn lead into gold. And every time when the truth caught up to them, they met the same fate. Take Johann Friedrich Botcher, one of the most famous alchemical frauds in history. He convinced a king that he had the power to create gold, but when he failed, he wasn't just exposed. He was imprisoned, forced to work under watch. This is what happens to all false seekers. They rise high on deception, but the moment truth catches up to them, they fall harder than anyone else. And this is exactly why real alchemists devised ways to test the unworthy, the uninitiated. One of the most well-known was the red powder trick. If a student came claiming they were ready for the Philosopher's Stone, the master would give them a small vial of red powder, telling them it was the secret ingredient to transmutation. The final step to creating gold. If the student immediately ran off to try and turn lead into gold, they failed, because they were still thinking materially. They weren't seeking wisdom, they were seeking power. Cornelio would have failed this test in an instant, because from the moment he got his hands on what he believed was divine power, he used it to control others, not to better himself. This is why he meets the fate that all false seekers do. His own illusions consume him. When he is exposed, his followers turn on him. He is left with nothing, his false miracles shattered, his promises empty. And in the end, he is not merely humiliated, he is devoured. And this is where Fullmetal Alchemist leans into pure Gnostic symbolism, because Cornelio is not just any fraud. He is a servant of Father, the Demiurge. And what happens to false prophets in the Gnostic tradition? They are devoured by the very illusions that they serve. Cornelio thought he had power. He thought he was in control. But he was only ever a pawn in something greater, and in the end, his own arrogance consumed him. And Rose, she was left with nothing. Rose says, "What am I supposed to believe in now? What am I supposed to do?" And Ed replies,
"Stand up and walk. Keep moving forward. You've got 2 good legs, so use them."
No more false gods, no more shortcuts, no more waiting for someone else to save her. It's time to move forward. Because in the end, there is no easy path, no divine miracle, no philosopher's stone that will ever fix everything without a price. There's only the road ahead, and whether or not you're willing to walk it. Cornello thought he could cheat the system. He believed he could take without giving, wield power without sacrifice, but in the end, his illusions consumed him. And not just metaphorically, he was devoured, literally. Because Cornello wasn't chosen. He wasn't special. He wasn't even in control. He was just another pawn, a temporary tool in a much larger game. And when pawns outlive their usefulness, they are discarded. Lust knew this. She had seen it happen countless times before. Cornello had played his part, and now he was nothing more than excess weight. And in their world, it gets fed to gluttony. Gluttony wasn't like the others. He had no grand ambitions, no schemes or desires beyond his single, all-consuming instinct. He was hunger given form, a force of nature that simply took, because that was his purpose, because that was what he was made for. Cornello had spent his life feeding on the faith of others, growing fat on their desperation, gorging himself on stolen power. But now the tables had turned. Now he was the meal. And in the end, he never had any power. Not real power. He had only borrowed illusions, tricks granted to him by those who saw him as nothing more than a means to an end. And when that end came, when the truth was exposed, his fate was sealed. Because in this world, whether through alchemy, through blind faith, or through sheer arrogance, no one takes without consequence. And the moment you believe you can, that is when the price comes due. Because nothing, and I say nothing, can be gained without something of equal value being lost. And this is the true law that governs everything. Now let's talk about equivalent exchange, because this isn't just some scientific principle in Fullmetal Alchemist, it is the very foundation of reality. At its core, equivalent exchange states that nothing can be gained without something of equal value being lost. It is the law that governs all of alchemy. But here's the thing. It's not just an alchemical rule. It is one of the oldest and most universal spiritual laws in history. This phrase, as above, so below, is one of the core teachings of Hermeticism. It means that the same laws that govern the universe also govern us. The microcosm reflects the macrocosm. This is the foundation of equivalent exchange. But this idea doesn't just appear in Hermeticism. It exists in nearly every spiritual tradition in history. In Norse mythology, Odin sacrifices his eye to the well of Mimir in exchange for wisdom. He doesn't take knowledge. He pays for it with a part of himself. In Greek myth, Prometheus steals from the gods, trying to bring enlightenment to humanity. But the price? Eternal suffering. Equivalent exchange. In Egyptian mythology, the goddess Mot weighs the hearts of the dead against a feather. Only those who live in balance, who give us as much as they took, could pass into eternity. Again, equivalent exchange. And in alchemy, the same rules apply. Transformation requires sacrifice. If you try to take without giving, you don't just fail, you are consumed by your very arrogance. This is why every major character in Fullmetal Alchemist who tries to break equivalent exchange meets the same fate. Azumi Curtis loses her ability to bear children. Edward loses his arm and leg. Alphonse loses his entire body. Because when you try to cheat the system doesn't bend. It takes something in return. This is the same principle found in karma, in the balance of nature, in the idea that every action has consequence. It is not punishment, it's simply the way the universe works. And yet, one character believes they can defy it. Father, the self-proclaimed God. Father believes he can bypass equivalent exchange, that if he gathers enough power, he can become free from consequence, free from sacrifice. But in the end, that belief is what destroys him, because equivalent exchange is not just a law of alchemy. It is a law of existence. And this is what Fullmetal Alchemist expresses so powerfully. There's no escape from the cost of transformation. You cannot take without giving. You cannot ascend without sacrifice. This is why every myth warns against shortcuts. This is why alchemy is a path, not a trick. And this is why the ultimate lesson of this series comes not from Father, but from Edward himself. Now, we come to the end, to the final unavoidable lesson of Fullmetal Alchemist, the moment when Edward Elric stands before truth one last time. Truth is one of the most fascinating and profound concepts in the entire series, because truth is not God. It does not pass judgment. It does not punish. It does not reward. Truth is simply what is. And this is why Fullmetal Alchemist goes beyond just being a story about alchemy. It is a story about enlightenment. The ancient Gnostics believed that the material world was an illusion, one created by the Demiurge, a false god who trapped humanity in ignorance. To escape, one had to seek gnosis, divine knowledge, the realization of the truth. In Fullmetal Alchemist, truth is not a demiurge. It is not a ruler. If anything, it's the monad, the source of all things, the reflection of all knowledge. And when people try to defy it, when they try to take without giving, they are simply shown who they are. Father stands before truth, and what does he say?
Tell me, why did you refuse to join me? Why, God? How did I disappoint you?
And truth's response is not wrathful, not vengeful. It simply tells him the reality of what he has done.
You were incapable of believing in yourself. You stole your power from others. You rejected your human origins and chose to covet the power of what you call God. You never grew beyond your days in the flask.
It is not punishing Father, it is showing him who he has always been.
You simply must have seen the answer with your own eyes.
And now Edward stands before truth and he finally understands. He doesn't ask for more power, he doesn't demand another deal. He doesn't try to take, instead he offers himself. He gives up his gate, his ability to perform alchemy, the thing that has defined his entire life, this entire show. And this is the true final transmutation. Because the real Philosopher's Stone was never about gold. It was never about bending the universe to your will. It was always the self. Edward, by sacrificing alchemy, becomes whole. He no longer needs it because he has finally learned what it means to be human. Edward has done what no other alchemist has ever done. He has beaten truth, not by overpowering it, but by understanding it. And in that moment, the entire journey of Fullmetal Alchemist comes full circle. The search for power, the cost of shortcuts, the reality of equivalent exchange. It all leads here, to the final ultimate realization that true wisdom is not about taking, but about becoming. So what do you think? Does Fullmetal Alchemist use alchemy, truth, and equivalent exchange to tell a deeper story about reality, transformation, and the price of wisdom? If you enjoyed exploring these esoteric, philosophical, and symbolic themes in anime and media, please give this video a like. It really helps the channel out. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next breakdown. And if you know someone who loves stories like Fullmetal Alchemist like I do, share this video, because great stories deserve deeper conversations. Thanks for watching Magus in the Media, and until next time.